Welcome to the spot. It's time to ignite. Oh yeah. Operation Hangout. The feeling's just right. Chilling with the crew. We're ready to groove. Opinions flying high. Come on, let's move. Woo. Hang out all night long, all night. Laughing and debating, playing our song. Oh yeah. Share your thoughts, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Operation Hangout, let's reach for the sky. Let's fly. Pull up a chair, let's get in the zone. Voices blending smooth like a funky trombone. Oh yeah. Topics from the heart, making us think. With a twist and a shout, raise up your drink. Cheers. Hang out all night long, all night. Laughing and debating, playing our song. Oh yeah. Share your thoughts, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Operation Hangout, let's reach for the sky. Let's fly. Bring it down, shake it up, feel the beat. With every word we share, the circle's complete. Living loud, think it proud, that's what we do. Oh yeah. Join the club, come on through, we're waiting for you. Alright. Hang out all night long, all night. Laughing and debating, playing our song. Oh yeah. Share your thoughts, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Operation Hangout, let's reach for the sky. Let's fly. Hang out.
What is going on, everybody? We're back at it with another show, with another episode. Of course, you know where you're at. You're at the only place you want to be on a Saturday night. We are at Spartan HQ Network, Operation Hangout. I'm your host, Ghost of Sparta. And my co-host, he's little, he's big, he's cranky, he is Baby Groot.
Bear paw.
Rolling.
Bear paw. It's bear paw. Ain't no goat in Africa. So let's keep it that way.
I think Groot came from
Hey,
Africa, actually, now I think about it.
not nope. Nada. Wouldn't
Mm,
be. I'm more hear the
yeah.
problem. Because of my origin, I'm either a bear or a gorilla. Choose one. There's no goat.
You know, they do have miniature gorillas now too.
Nah. I know the nature of my country. Either you want to call me a bear or a gorilla. There ain't no goat. Sorry to
Mhm.
say.
So anyway, dude, so let's talk about it. You know what I'm going to talk about, and it's been a while since we had this video game instruction. So, what is your history
There's a
with
video behind that.
you're glitching, dude? You're glitching pretty bad. You there, David? Okay, let's try this one more time, David. What is your? Let me talk, please. What is your history with the old school? David, you're glitching. You're glitching extremely bad. Yes, you are.
Hello.
All right. As David fixes the technical issues, like always, I'm going to say he has the King Smith curse tonight. We're going to talk about a little Nintendo. So Nintendo to me is a hey, it was going to cash a unique property because Nintendo's been around since forever. I want to say at this point. Um, it's been around since I was alive. Put it this way, I was born in '85. It's been around ever since then. But Nintendo wasn't always a video game system. A lot of people didn't know this. Nintendo was a game card company at one point. I got a video play with a little bit, but with everything coming out lately is interesting. But let's get my other boy in here. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for our president. That that's
And I
really
did look it up
nice.
the information concerning Nintendo, which I did. It was
Okay,
established. It was back in 1889 from 1950 as a card game company.
that's correct.
And
Hold on before I'll give you the floor to each one of you a second. Hang on a second. All right.
okay,
Before we open the floor with one game, what is one game comes to your memory immediately? Is holy shit! I wish I had that game still to play. David,
Super Mario.
all right. How about you, Paul?
One game I would have liked to have played. I don't know if I can.
Yeah, they come to your memory. Close your eyes. Go, oh my god! I wish I had the Nintendo again to play that game.
Wish I had a Nintendo to play that game.
Yeah.
Nothing comes to mind. Nothing comes to mind. As far as a game that I didn't play that I wish I played, nothing comes to mind.
Okay, any game comes to your mind from Nintendo?
Zelda or whatever.
Really?
Is that because that was a popular game at the time, but I was kind of out of gaming for a minute there, so I didn't get a chance to about the early to mid '90s. So when Legend of Zelda came out, at least I would have got a better feel for what all the buzz was about, because that was a hot selling game. And then certainly when the handheld Nintendo came out, the pocket version, that was pretty
Game Boy.
hot at the time. Game Boy and whatnot. So again, but I was already out of the gaming situation at that time. But Zelda seems certainly at the time had a big sort of hold on everyone's attention at that particular time. But like I said, I missed it. But
Zelda is actually an interesting property because Zelda has a highs and very lows. It's no middle with Zelda. It's highs or lows, in my personal opinion. Like what brought me over into the Zelda world was Ocarina of Time, the 64 version, the first 3D version. And people have named that the best game of ever. Like, is the best game Nintendo ever made. I think is like nine. I think it was rated 9 out of 10, 9.9 out of 10. Only thing the reason to get 10 out of 10 was the camera angles. It wasn't really weird how you had to move the camera angles. That's the only reason you get 10 out of 10. And it still holds up pretty well after what, 3 generations later? That's pretty good, actually. Think about it. You know what I'm saying? For a 64-bit machine, I'll give him credit was due. You know what I'm saying? Zelda's one of my that's why I have this one here sometimes. Let me hear you guys remember this one.
Hey, listen!
Does any ring a bell for anybody? Really, Paul? That's from Zelda, dude.
Hey, listen!
like I said, I never played it. So again, I don't have a reference. But like I said, you asked me a game I wish I would have played. Like I said, I never played it, so I don't know but everybody at the time, it was like a hot selling game, and it was on all the platforms, and everybody was just in love with it. But I just had other interests at the time.
No, like Eric just said, Metal Gear. That's another good one. Mario Brothers. What got me into the game system? I'll be honest, is Mario Brothers. That is literally one of my favorite games, and I always loved it. Like Mario Bros. 3 to be specific. when I was old enough to start playing video games, the Super Nintendo came out, but I was so young, didn't know the difference. I just wanted Super Mario. I want Nintendo. I want Nintendo. I want Super Mario. Number three was the best thing ever back then. And funny enough, I still haven't beat the goddamn thing. I have to go back and play it and beat it.
Mhm.
But I recently just beat, after 30 years, this is how sad it is actually, Super Mario Brothers. After 30 years. So I'm gonna give you guys a floor for a minute. Dave, you want to go first? Give me your little feedback of Nintendo, whatever you want to say. Your opening thoughts.
I would say that when I first
You're
got my
muted, buddy.
hand on Nintendo, I had. How am I muted?
No, you got you got a
I
delay
didn't
for
mute
some reason
myself.
today.
I noticed that it's weird. When I first started getting into Nintendo, I was more into the Super Mario Bros. 1, Super Mario Bros. 2, into Super Play Action Football. We had the Donkey Kong game. Now, everybody remember the original Nintendo, you had the Duck Hunt. It was an extra accessory whereby you get the gun, you plug it into the system,
Oh
and you
God.
have to aim at the duck. I remember that. That was the regular Nintendo, because the regular Nintendo was more like a case. You lift up the doorway. The cartridge, man, everybody remember the Nintendo days or the cartridge you had to slide it
Blow
in
it. Yep.
carefully, press it down, close it, and hope it load up. When it load up, you're good to go. Um, I remember from Nintendo, it went from Nintendo to Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo with the same cartridge, but this time there was an opening on the top. You plug it in, same thing you had to do with the cartridge. Plug it in. Now, here what's funny about Nintendo. The first Nintendo, they were giving out some special edition game. Like there was one in particular, I think it was Super Mario Bros. 3. He had the gold cartridge edition. There's a couple of the games that came out at that time that could do the special edition. If they do it in mint condition, they actually sold a lot of money. Super Nintendo was the same thing as well. There were different versions of Super Nintendo. You had the American version, the British version, the Japanese versions. Then you had Nintendo 360. Nintendo 360 had the weird control. You had Nintendo Cube. It's like Nintendo goes through a lot of transformation over the period of time.
Hmm.
Even though I was looking up the history, that you were totally correct. Nintendo was actually a card game. It was
Yeah,
founded
he
back in
actually back in 18. I
the
have
exact
right here.
the exact date is September 23, 1889.
Thank you. That's what I was. I was just looking up myself.
Located in Kyoto, Japan. The founder
Mhm.
of the company was Fusajiro Yamauchi, which is crazy. And that lasted from 1889 to 1950. That was the early beginning of the history of Nintendo. Look it up because I didn't know about what a card game, so I'm glad you mentioned that. Then from 1960 all the way to 1930, they entered into electronic. During the 1980 was the rise of Nintendo as a video game giant. 1980, they introduced the game and watch handheld series. 1981 released Donkey Kong, debuted Mario. Donkey Kong was the first game we introduced Mario. Back then, it was calling Jumpman. Funny, isn't it? They launched the what they call the Famicom, was that was the Japanese version, not the actual original name. 1985, they rebranded Famicom as Nintendo Entertainment System (NES) in North America. Revitalized the video game industry after the 1983 crash, but Mr. Bennett know about that part better than I do. He's a historian. 1986, they released The Legend of Zelda. During the 1990s, they came back extra strong with the Super Famicom, which is crazy. It first came in Japan before it came to the US. The Super Nintendo. 1996, this release of Nintendo 64, the first mainstream 3D console. The handheld success was iconic with the Game Boy back in 1989. Then the game that secured their stardom with Pokemon back in 1996. I can continue to read if you want me to continue to read because that's what I had to
No,
look
no,
for the
it's
game
fine.
real
It's fine. I want to
quickly.
give the floor for to Paul next in a few minutes. If you have nothing else to add to that.
No, I'll let Paul take over. He's more the historian than I do because he have more details.
All
I
right, Paul,
do.
you're up, bud.
Um, I guess since we're talking about Nintendo specifically tonight, um, not all gaming systems. Bottom line, the Nintendo NES is the greatest gaming system ever. Um, it literally saved gaming. So again, I go back, as David pointed out, I go back to the gaming crash of 1983, where you had a lot of games that were awful, that were out, where they were charging premium dollar, and you had close to about a dozen consoles at the time all competing around the same time, going all the way back to the Atari 2600. And then you had Magnavox, the Telstar, you had ColecoVision, and all these early gaming consoles back then. And it was just about volume, just putting stuff out there, and not quality games. And the biggest crash came with the releases on the Atari 2600 of ET and Pac-Man. Again, awful ports, and then the public had enough. And so basically, the Nintendo NES, which, as David said, started in Japan in 1983 as the Famicom system, came here to the U.S. in 1985 as the Nintendo NES. And it's literally saved and revitalized the game in the U.S. Without that, or probably even globally for that matter, but without that, all this other stuff that we're talking about is irrelevant, because the public was turned off and said, why am I spending $50 back in the 80s on games that are awful? And so Nintendo was fresh. Now, again, some of the peripherals that it had, remember, it had that robot that they were selling. If you got the whole package, you could just get the gaming console and the controllers.
Oh,
But
you're
then
talking
they
about
had like
the Virtual Boy.
yeah. So you had that. You also had the gun for duck hunt, the laser gun. And they had a few accessories there, but again, they certainly gave you something that was different, and certainly the graphics at the time, while they weren't necessarily arcade quality, it was a big step up. And they really came a long way in terms of MIDI technology. The soundtracks to these games was better. Like one of my favorite soundtracks of all time comes from this one game. I just had a brain freeze right now. It's one of my favorite games
Of
also.
course. Why wouldn't you ask right now?
Eric knows the Eric Rygar. Certainly a legendary port. We all know about Super Mario Brothers and that iconic song. That if you just play the first couple bars of it, if you're Gen X or older millennial, it comes across right away. It's a classic. It's in your head. You can't escape it. You can't use it. They made rap beats out of it. They made all kinds of different cuts and different tracks of it and whatnot. And it's just permanently ingrained in our memory. So again, without that gaming console, that to me is almost like it's now. Look, everything builds on another. So I don't want to disrespect anything that came before it, even though you can criticize again the quality of the games, but again, it wasn't so much you're limited by the technology. There's some decent games out, but again, there was such a rush just to pump games out that was such poor quality. They didn't take advantage of every inch. Now, again, like a classic game like Pitfall and Pitfall 2. I mean, great ports for Atari 2600. Can't can't fault them for that. ColecoVision has some, the Donkey Kong port for ColecoVision. Again, great ones, but they didn't take advantage. They didn't squeeze every ounce out of the 8-bit. Now, in fact, it wasn't even 8-bit. It was even less than that. It was like 4-bit. Super Nintendo was 8-bit, and then you had your 16-bit with Sega Genesis and TurboGrafx 16 and those ports that came out after that. But again, that was the anchor that really saved the industry. So it's almost like you got roots, and then you got this core root, and then everything kind of springs from that. So I'll always give Nintendo the credit over Sony or any other Microsoft and any of the platform that was to come up, and you might have sold more. Because I was just looking at the sales. I think that the NES sold 61 million units, whereas the top selling of all time is PlayStation 2 with over 160 million units. But again, none of that matters. People bought in enough at a time when people said they were done. They bought 60 million units of that NES, and that saved the industry and allowed these guys to catch up. And then it's interesting, just also in my case, the only gaming system that I've ever owned. Now, I got to give credit to my man Eric, because he had the NES, and we were over here, over his house every weekend in high school and after, playing NES. And so, so I certainly give credit to him for introducing me to the NES, and then, all the games that we played certainly at his house all that time. But the only unit that I've ever owned, now again, people dog the unit, but you can't argue with the numbers. The only unit is the Wii, not Wii U or whatever, it's the regular Wii. You can laugh at it as what you want to. It's sold 8 all-time, 101 million. That was the unit that my girl, we didn't go through getting PS3, 4, 5, Xbox, all that. We didn't do any of that stuff. The Wii was enough for my girls with the driving games and the simple graphics as they were growing up, as, they were like 5, 6, and 7 at the time growing up. That was enough for them. When the dancing games came out, you had the Michael Jackson dancing game and all that. That's all they needed.
Oh, Dance Revolution.
Yeah. So we didn't need a ton of titles to keep them interested. So again, Nintendo has basically been the main unit that has, I guess, impacted in terms of gaming. I've owned an Atari 2600. I owned an Atari 5200. Those are the ones that I owned. The only one I owned after that was the Wii. Everything else was computer games. So I had a Mac, an early Apple Macintosh. So I had a lot of Dark Castle, which is probably one of the best games ever on the computer platform. Maybe we can even have a show maybe in the future talking specifically about computer games, because I think that's that's a special category in and of itself for those of you who favorite computers. And I think that's what happened. So when I got into into the early 90s, I got more into the computer games. I got my first computer I ever bought was a Mac back in '87, and so I had all those titles. Then once I went to PC, once I started building my own PCs and whatnot, when I got the Pentium, David, you remember the Pentium 486?
Mm-hmm.
The old school towers and whatnot. So yes, I was into that for a minute as well. Getting the graphics card and whatnot, the NVIDIA cards and all that. So I was a computer guy for a long time, and I didn't even pay attention to all those, because again, I knew I couldn't necessarily keep up with all. They come out with a PS3, PS4, like Nintendo, Super Nintendo, N64. I was like, I don't have time for all that. So I would rather deal with the computer games, and a lot of those computer games, they were actually free. A lot of that stuff was sort of like shareware. We had a lot of good gaming ports on the computer platforms that were shareware or downloads or whatever, or you got a copy of it from someplace where you couldn't hack. We didn't have the technology to hack the gaming cartridges, but if it was a computer game, yeah, you could find the downloading kit, especially for the Mac, the Apple. They had a mess of games that were you could download and find somewhere and play those titles. So that's kind of, I got into that. But yeah, Nintendo. Without Nintendo NES, 1983 Famicom, 1985 NES system, nothing else matters. It's the most important, and in my view, based on impact and relevance and what it did for the industry, it is the greatest gaming console ever. and I think I explained my reasons
I
why.
agree 100%, but the list I found disagrees with me and you together. Before you shoot me, Paul, don't shoot me because this is the list I'm going to read off. I'm going to read from worst to
Shoot
best.
them. Shoot them.
David, don't make me hit the button. I will hit the button. So from worst is Virtual Boy. It says itself because the 3D technology wasn't there at the time. Second place or next in line is the NSS. Numbers say that was good. I don't understand why it's in like the second last. Wii U, 64, Super Nintendo, GameCube, Wii, DS, Switch is the top one right now. No, it came out of Switch 2 because this came out.
Okay, it's probably done by a younger person.
Mhm.
And again, it's probably they're not taking into effect again, unless you lived through the gaming crash in 1983, you have no idea. That's like somebody talking about like a war situation, like, the Iraq
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
war to somebody who lived through Korean War, World War II. It's like you can't compare the two. Like I said, I'm not talking about the graphics and all those other consoles that he's talking about. Yes, they are superior in every way, technically, and everything else.
Except the Wii.
When I say great, I don't mean in terms of what has the best graphics, what has the best this and
I think
best
the
that.
Nintendo.
I
I'm
talk
sorry,
about
go
I
ahead.
talk about impact.
I was
I'm talking
about to
about
say that.
impact and relevance and
I
importance.
was going to say Nintendo and Super Nintendo. The game, yes, the graphic wasn't the greatest in the world. Let's be honest here, guys. But games have great storylines behind it. It was one thing I love about the old games. When you had to launch a game, you didn't get it broken or had to put a patch out the first day. It had to go out perfect every single time. And games would delay 6 months to a year, even 2 years, but it would still come out. That's one thing I loved about the Nintendo. Even to get Sega, the games were perfect. But do I always have most of the systems I played. I played the Switch, DS. I didn't play because I wasn't. I really got out of the handhelds at the time. The Wii, unfortunately, I played. I still want to get my life back from those days. They're horrible. But I liked GameCube. I think it was great. Super Nintendo was one of my best systems. I think personally. 64 again. I loved it. I love playing Pokemon Stadium on that damn thing. Like I was a beast on Pokemon Stadium. I don't care who the hell I'm like David. If me and you went against Pokemon Stadium with your own Pokemon trained correctly, I would whoop your ass. That's not even a question about it. Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. And
not
like
happening.
the very few of these I did not play. And I disagree with most of this list personally. If I had to put it in my personal list, and I know you haven't played most of them, Paul, but David, you might be able to jump in a little bit in this one. So my personal one would be NES, then Super Nintendo, then I will probably hit 64 in GameCube, Game Boy probably up there. Then I'll probably hit the Switch because I played a little bit of Switch. I haven't played too much of it, but they do have some solid games in there. And we, in last place personally.
So wait a minute. So you played it? You mentioned
Yeah,
NES, right? So you played
yeah.
it? I mean, wow.
Why are you
Okay.
surprised?
No, because I'm just at your age. You're 40. I mean, it came out basically around the time you were born. So I'm like, how did you get a
So
chance
the
to
story,
play
like I
it?
said earlier, when they first came out, when my mom was buying my first gaming system, oh God,
How old were you
uh,
then?
6, 7, around there.
Okay.
Um, the 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 Nintendo was on sale, but I didn't care. I got a Super Nintendo because I didn't know anything good back then. Only thing I cared about was playing Super Mario Bros. 3. That was the game of the game. I think that's what one of the best games that the NES had at the time that I remember of. And I could not
Mm.
stop bugging her. She says, "I need the Super Nintendo. I need the Nintendo. I need the Nintendo." That's all she heard. She says, "E-
So that's what, man. Just to clarify, you got a Nintendo or a Super
Nintendo."
Nintendo? The one that came out in
Yes,
'85. That's the one you
yes.
had, the first one. Okay. Well, I got to give credit there also because the fact that you're talking about 6 years later, and I remember those days that it was still relevant. Like the big game, like we were when we were in college, right? So again, from college from '87 to '91 until Genesis came out, that was the only time people flexed. But we were playing Nintendo the whole time. Tecmo Bowl, like if you're talking about like sports games, Tecmo Bowl, that was it. Like we were in Tecmo Bowl tournaments. I mean, fights were breaking out. I mean, all kinds of stuff going on. I mean, Tecmo Bowl was like, that was like a serious one-on-one game at the time, and the intensity was off the charts
Hmm.
with that. But the fact that you had a gaming console that was able to stay for, let's say, in your case, a 6-7 year period is also, I think, commendable. Now, again, as
I
far as
agree.
these other gaming consoles, because again, everything started coming out with PlayStation 3 and 4, just all these different things. Like the staying power, I don't know if it was as much before an older gaming console like that, and it's still marketable 6 years after it came out, despite the fact that new gaming consoles are coming out. That to me, that's telling also. Now again, it might have been cheaper than the other ones. I'll probably say that. Like it was probably cheaper to get an NES versus say a Genesis or TurboGrafx 16 or something like that around the time. But it still had sway. And the crazy thing now with all these gaming consoles, they still have sway today. I mean,
Absolutely.
because you can go to any store and they have like these um, consoles that have like dozens, if not hundreds, of the NES games in them, or the Atari games in them, or the Genesis games in them. Everything is basically in one, system. So it's amazing the technology now. You used to have to buy cartridges for everything. They're able to put all that data on a drive and put it into one gaming console, and you got 80 games or 100 games. All those classic games are less sort of at your disposal, and to be able to play them. But yeah, I was just curious about that because again, it's like I thought you would have been too young to appreciate the NES, but apparently, like I said, at that time it still had sway. Even I guess around 90, 91, around the time you're talking about.
Now, let me interject on this thing. The thing about this Nintendo history, it have been, I can't say controversial, but it have been tricky. For example, I had a Nintendo when they came out in 1985. That's the first console I got in my household. After that was Super Nintendo, as I mentioned. Then I had Nintendo 64. Then we had the GameCube, I believe. After that, the only held-home device I had in the household was Game Boy. Now, nobody noted it, but out of all the handheld device that Nintendo created, Nintendo DS was the most highest selling handheld console, which sold about 154 million, which was crazy. Second to that one was the iconic OG one with Game Boy, 118 million. And
I'm
reason why I'm
surprised
saying that,
DS did better, David. To be honest with you, I'm very surprised DS did better than the
no,
original Nintendo and
look,
Game Boy Color.
there's a huge significance behind that. Because when you look at the handheld game market, Game Boy was the first of its kind, number one. So you have to understand the dynamic of how that Game Boy should have had an impact in the gaming market. They're going from a huge, chunky handheld game. You know how Game Boy Advance afterward, and you have to like open and fold. Nintendo did was the first of its kind too, for that type of game card. Plus, the cartridge, the design, the type of game, they were able to have a huge library of games. But here where the problem comes to play, because they started with the Nintendo. They was the North American game library, meaning all the games they created within North America region. And anyone who was a big time gamer at the time, they will let you know that do you know there are Japanese games that you never heard of, with meaning the Japanese game library was much bigger than the North America. And some people will have relative or family who can travel to Japan to buy these things and bring it here, but you cannot use it on the American version or NES. You have to buy the Famicom version to play it here. That's how we have all the game heads. Same thing with Super Nintendo, you have Super Famicom. Nintendo 64 was the universal all across the globe. GameCube was the same thing. You know that they stopped calling it Famicom back in 1996. And ever since then, they take the uniform naming. With the Nintendo 64, GameCube, Wii U, and Nintendo Switch. Now, here's the thing about Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch was a hybrid, which is you could either treat it as a handheld game or you treat it as a game console. That was the first of its kind because they were competing with the other juggernaut. Yeah, Nintendo was the first of its kind before, not gonna say before, but Atari with the competition, which you can better mention Atari 2600, I had that. Atari 7200, I did not have that. You had the Coleco, you had a Commodore, those were the first of the kind before Nintendo. But Nintendo did say the gaming market big time. Nintendo was the OG of the OG. The problem is when Sega came into the business, everybody who remember the 80s, the commercial was flooded the airway. Who is better, Nintendo or Sega? Sega or Nintendo? Sega will come in giving their punches, 1-2 punches. We got better, faster graphic. While Nintendo was more like an ice cream truck. That was how they compare Nintendo. That was the drift. While that was going on, Sony came in. Technically, they were helping Nintendo build their console, and instead of helping Nintendo, they built their own called PlayStation. They came to the disc. Then we had other game consoles that came to it, but here's the problem with Nintendo. They're realizing,
Time
I
out.
know, but
The you're close by literal off of your history. So Nintendo was working with Sony to make a CD version that goes on top of the Super Nintendo, but then they backstabbed them and went public with Panasonic that got launched only in Japan because the attachment failed so bad. But Sony already put so much RNA and money into it. Like, you know what? Fuck this. We're still going to launch it. We're just going to call it the PlayStation. And that's how the PlayStation was born. They already put enough money and time invested into it. They didn't want to lose the money, so they just switched gears a little bit, and that's how the PlayStation. They did it out of spike towards Nintendo.
yeah, but even though the Panasonic 3DO also came out, Sony had their hand on a lot of RNA for a lot of companies. Remember,
That I'm not going to disagree. I'm just saying with Nintendo and Sony deal, the way you say is a little off. You know what I'm saying? I just want to make
I,
correct you
I
there.
understand that. I appreciate that. But one thing I didn't know, Sony didn't knew already. Sooner or later, they had to jump in the market. Because it's one thing to stay behind the shadow, helping everybody to build their console, but why not join the game and do it themselves? That's always been the thing that Sony have tried itself. Sony wanted to own that company that started from somewhere and wanted to take whatever it chance to get to the next level. That's what it was. It's just that Nintendo almost got pushed out of the game. Meaning, when Sony came into the thing, it was Sony between Sega. That was the main fight. Everybody was saying Nintendo is for the kids, while either Sega or Sony is for the big boys.
So I'm going to
Oh,
push back on that a little bit. All right. So
okay, go ahead.
no, not. You're not wrong. What are you saying? You're 100% right. I'm pushing back my personal opinion a little bit because I felt now that I'm older, I wanted a Sega too. I wanted everything as a kid. You know how kids are back in the day. I want this, I
Hmm.
want that. But I also realized as I'm getting now that I'm older, Sega didn't really have any exclusives. Everything that came out on Sega came out on Nintendo. There's only maybe Mortal Kombat that I remember of, but was Mortal. Am I wrong? Because
Hold
Mortal
on.
Kombat was only for
Sega, hold on. Mm-mm. Sega did have exclusive. Remember, there were different mascots for Sega.
yeah.
What
Well,
were the
I'm not talking
mascots for
about.
Sega?
I'm not talking about Sonic. Sonic is a different thing. I'm not talking about. I'm talking about like third party exclusives. Because Sonic was made by Sega. I remember that, and Mario was made by
Hmm.
Nintendo. I'm talking about most games that you saw on the Sega Genesis, right? Yes, Genesis was
Hmm.
always on the Nintendo too. Look it up, and I've done the research on it. But I want to show you guys a little treat tonight. So I don't. I have two sentences right here. So they're not just any system. So this one I bought when it was first released, and it's the me if you guys see how small this sucker is the classic Super Nintendo. I love this thing. It brings memories
Hmm.
back. I can literally pick it up, come over to Paul's house, plug it in, play. He probably won't know how to use the buttons, but that's a whole different story. No offense, but I'm gonna supersize you guys. I bought this recently for about $100, but the condition in it surprised me. So it, it can't go wrong with it. These still sell really well to this day, and obviously you buy it's worth more with the boxes and everything. The retro systems for Nintendo is literally ridiculous. The prices for them so ridiculous, not even funny. Like a game that was what was the average price of the game at back then, Paul? Do you remember?
I think it's $40-$50. I mean, if it was a hot title like that everybody wanted, around release around Christmas time, lines around the door, they would even jack up the prices depending where you got it. If you went to like a GameStop or something,
Hmm.
the lines were out the door. Or back then you had Toys R Us. I think that was before GameStop. You had Toys R Us, or those stores would have them.
Or
And
Funko
again,
Land it was at one time.
Funkoland, yeah. So again, you had, they basically they would charge anything that they wanted. Hot off the press games, people standing in line, 50-60 bucks again in the 80s for certain
Mhm.
titles. If it garnered that kind of attention.
So I assume at one point,
Now,
hang on one second, David. I assume at one point the government probably stepped in and saying, "Okay, we gotta get a price here. Everybody has to be equal across the board." It couldn't.
No,
No,
no, I don't think so. I think
because
I think it was market driven.
yeah,
Market
because
driven. I mean,
now today's market, it doesn't matter what if you buy it online or to the store or what store you go to, the prices are always the same. Only time it's different is the used version. And of course, it drops in right, it goes up and down a little bit, of course. But go ahead, David. I'm sorry to cut you off.
when you mentioned the only game that Sega has Sonic Hedgehog, which I
Hmm.
understand that. They also create Yakuza Like a Dragon. That was their exclusive game. Virtual Fighter at the time was the exclusive game. Virtual Tennis, Virtual Cop, Virtual Striker. Street of Rage, Golden Axe, Shinobi, Alex Kidd, and Wonder Boy were exclusive to Sega at one point in time. Panzer Dragoon, Space Hunter, Outrun, Puyo Puyo, and Super Monkey Ball were also exclusive to Sega at one point. And there was other notable like Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi, Night into June, Shin Megami Tensei.
Yeah, Crazy Taxi was
The
for the
only
Dreamcast. That was later on. I know that for a fact.
that was later on. I
But my
remember that because
argument
we
still
went from Sega Genesis,
is
Mega
when
Drive, Sega Saturn, then
okay,
Dreamcast.
when Sega came out, the Super Nintendo was out at the time, correct?
Hmm.
But
That was Sega Genesis.
Genesis, I'm sorry, Sega Genesis was Dreamcast. No, yeah, what there was no Sega when the original Nintendo came out, right? The NSS.
The original one was Sega Genesis that competed with Nintendo. Then from there, went from Sega Genesis to Sega Saturn.
Okay,
Sega Saturn was a competition for Super Nintendo. Then when PlayStation came into the district, PlayStation 1, right? They were competing with Dreamcast. It was PlayStation 2 that kicked Dreamcast butt and put Dreamcast on a retirement plan.
I'm not arguing it like that. I'm not arguing because before even the PS2 came out, Dreamcast was ready digging the grave at the point. It was done already at the point. That wasn't even a thing. But here's where I'm saying Super Nintendo and Sega
Hmm.
at that time, head to head, Nintendo had a lot
They,
more games coming out,
they, it did.
and a lot of games that came out
It had a,
Super Nintendo came out as Sega too. So a lot of people say, "Why am I going to buy the same system?" There's not a lot of games for the Sega.
and here the problem with it. Developers. That is one of the big issue with game console and game company. A lot of developers that would develop the games with multi developed games for Nintendo far more than developed games for Sega. Yes, Sega had a fast processor, right? But here what the instrument better know this because when you're dealing with developers, they like to stay in their comfort zone. Building games for Nintendo was much easier than building games for Sega. You gotta understand the system gaming engine that were created for Nintendo were made it easy for developers to make a lot more games. Sega was introducing a new technology that have a faster processor, and some game developer wasn't willing to take that risk or take that challenge. But those who did showed the reason why we need to have a faster processor to have a better. I'm looking for the word. Either you want to either call it better action, better feel, whatever you want to call it. Because remember, everybody, even your father, your mom, your uncle, your grandpa, you to put on the TV and sold or advertisement a lot. I mean, Mr. Better knew about it. On TV, the ad between Sega and Nintendo was racking the airway all across North
Oh, I
America.
agree 100%. Not no pushback on that.
I remember like it was yesterday. They put the PlayStation, no, sorry, no, sorry, they put Nintendo behind an ice cream truck with a TV. This is Nintendo based on speed ice cream truck, right? They took the Sega Genesis and put it on a drag racer, and this is Sega. That was the commercial. And guess who copied that same type of idea of the commercial? Apple and Windows.
Okay, so here's the other factor. I think I don't want to make the Sega versus I want to move on after this. So when the Nintendo first came out, it was between 178, excuse me, 179.99 to 199. Depends which version you get. What gun? If you're getting the gun, the game, and so on. Now with the Sega, it was 198 flat rate. That's what it was. One game, one Corolla, boom, or two Corollas. I'm not sure what it was back then. It was 16-bit. So the price does have a factor in the whole thing we're talking about. We got to keep that in mind. It's from what I'm understanding. Again, I was very too young to remember that. So maybe you guys can a little bit educate a youngling for once. Um, from the money you're spending, you're getting more bang for your money for this Nintendo. Or was it a different factor that back then that people gravitated to Nintendo more?
I think it was more so the titles, um, and the market, uh, like what each gaming console was trying to attract. I think Nintendo has always had a market for younger players, younger audiences. I think Sega or what have you, they started getting more, especially when Madden came out, like in what 91, 92 or something. When the first Madden game came out, I think that definitely changed the game. And I think Sega, Sony, those they definitely went more towards the more sporting games, the more adult titles. But again, you've always had, like I said, the Mario franchise that has always been a Nintendo stable. So I think it part of it was market. You're going more for fantasy, more for fun. Whereas I think those other consoles might have went more for competition. Like I said, I know you had Tecmo Bowl. That might have been the most competitive game on the NES at the time. And so I think it was just more so what what the what market you were trying to attract. And like I said, with the Wii, I don't think they were. I think they were unapologetic about who they were going for. Again, that's why everybody clown Wii. But you can't argue with 100 and something million units sold. I
No,
mean,
the Wii did really well.
so they were definitely going for
Commercially,
family.
did really
They
well.
were definitely going for family friendly. They were definitely going for kids. They were definitely going for. They weren't trying to give you the even the most graphically fun games. It was just like what looked good to children. I think was more so what they were going for.
Now,
And so yeah.
sorry about that. Sorry about that. I was when you were mentioning that the game price for the Nintendo, I tried to search it up. The original MSRP, the original Nintendo system that came out in 1985, it was priced at $199.
That's what I said.
The second one, which is Super Nintendo, was the same price, $199. Nintendo 64 had the same price as well, 199. The GameCube was 199. What boosted bump up was the Nintendo Wii that went to 249. The Wii U was 299 between 349 between. I didn't know there was a thing between the basic and the premium. can't did it. The game color gave $299. The Nintendo Switch Lite with $199. The Nintendo 49, and the latest one that came out, the Nintendo Switch 2, is now $449.99. And these are the original MSRP.
So one thing I want to mention is okay. So when the systems came out back then,
Hmm.
it was a different time, obviously. Nintendo, even to very recently, there've been a lot of questions on Nintendo right now with the Switch 2. But let's forget the Switch 2 for a minute because that's so new. I don't even talk about that yet. It literally just came out what 2 days ago. Maybe a little, maybe 3 days, maybe yes. I'm not sure when it just came out this week. I know, but Nintendo was one thing. It was always price friendly and family friendly. That's why a lot of people gravitate to it. Listen, I'm not a big fan of the Wii. I said it out loud. I never liked it because I'm not. I don't want to jump up and down like a goddamn kangaroo playing my video games. I want to relax and get fat when I'm playing my video games. So, but commercially, it was one of the biggest successes I ever had. You don't think so?
Here's the
You
thing.
disagree, David?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm not disagreeing, but the thing about the Wii, with a lot of people didn't know that the Wii broke ground on multiple levels. It was one of the gaming consoles that was, when I say heavily, it was heavily accepted in the nursing home. They say it was the only game console that got the elderly active in their routine or their exercise in case they don't feel like
Not
going
arguing that one
outside.
bit.
With
Not
I was
arguing.
shocked, about it because of all the game console, no one wanted to sit down to do it, but it's just that somehow they found that the were literally cash.
All right, David, time out, time out, time out, time out, time out, time out, time out.
And
All right,
I thought
David,
it was like
time out, time out, David, time out. I
people,
said time out. David, you're breaking up. You're breaking up. Nobody can understand you. You're come back, exit, and come back in. You're breaking up way too bad. Even Paul said in the back chat, "Is it me or David?" I'm not even joking. Check your back chat. You're breaking up so bad. I'm not trying
no,
to be a dick, bro.
I think I know I had to be the weather because it's raining now, so I don't know what's going on. So we got affecting it
Do you want to try go
because
exit
I
and come
closed
back
out a
in?
lot of applications. I'll actually come back in.
All right, all right. As David comes back there, I cannot deny what David's saying. It was a very successful system. As much I wasn't a fan of it. That's P's and Q's at this point.
Right.
Personally, 64 was my next one in line after that. I love the 64.
Mhm.
Definitely with Smash Brothers, like right here. He just mentioned it. He mentioned about GoldenEye was one of the best games they ever had. Hang on, let's get David back in here. Let me finish my statement, David, and I'll give you the floor again. And you can pick up where you left off. I'm sorry. So
Hmm.
64, Smash Brothers. Oh my God. Give me Smash Brothers, give me Mario 64, and give me Zelda. Those are the three best games ever. Like I said, Zelda Ocarina of Time was the best game ever made. It came out 9.9 out of 10. Do go look it up. You don't believe me. Go look it up. I did my research on this fucker. I am not lying to you, brother. David, go ahead and take the floor. Go ahead. I know you finished what you're going to say. I'm going to step away
No,
so I can
because
put
when you
this.
no, because you say an entry for GoldenEye, yes, I recognize. And Mario 64 was a hard game. Smash Brother became a pop icon, but did everybody forget about Mario Kart? Mario Kart was the
I
game
wasn't
that
a big
a
Mario
lot of
Kart back then.
no, we know what I'm saying. Mario Kart was different from most racing games. It was giving features whereby racing game did not have, whereby people can attack each other and set people up, do all the booby traps. So it became a household favorite. But I get it. The N64 GoldenEye was a cheat to me. Even though it wasn't a popular game, reason why, but I did play it out in my job quite at the time. Everybody was going after the golden gun. If you get the golden gun, it's one shot kill. Doesn't matter where you get hit. You can get hit in the Mr. Paul, you would think I'm lying. You get hit on the hand, you're still dead.
Mhm.
That
With,
was
with,
the
with,
what's was the name for Call of Duty. You know, if you ever want to play Call of Duty, go on that. You know, you want to fucking play, you call cheats and hacks and like play Go on that. You learn every little cheat that you play. You know, Mario Call of Duty. You shoot the hand like he's not that. But I just shoot his hand. It's supposed to work.
but the thing is, the issue with the gaming war with Nintendo was trying to be unique. And what made it different with the controller. The controller, I could never understand who idea was it,
64.
whereby it looked like a, you know how the people that do painting, it took a hint from that whereby the controller looked like, I don't know what a boomerang look was trying to do. It was weird. You play it this way, you play this. It was like the controllers were ridiculous. Crash Bandicoot was a major hit on Nintendo side more than anything else. No, Crash Bandicoot was not Nintendo for Sony side. My bad. Crash Bandicoot Racing beat Mario Kart. Mm, there was more copying Mario Kart ideas. That was the issue. Because if anything, that particular franchise didn't go as far as Mario Kart have gone to. So right now, Mario Kart right now is it's still lasting. You don't see any new Crash Bandicoot racing as it is right now. So I will argue that maybe it did to a degree, but after that, people was more into playing Mario Kart far more based on the flexibility behind it whatsoever. They even make Sonic Racing. Let's be real. Mario Kart was the original idea. Everybody tried to copy it. So they made their version called Crash Racing. The Sega made their own version with Sonic Racing because they were doing similar what Mario Kart was introducing. Mario Kart was original. Everybody
I think
knew about it
everybody was copying off each other at some point.
to a degree.
I'm surprised we didn't see more lawsuits back then because you know how back now, oh, you copied my game, lawsuit. You copied my controller, lawsuit. You know why David has white hair, lawsuit.
But the thing is,
Like,
Smash Brother became a pop icon thing whereby you can put all your favorite characters for all your favorite game and they fight each other. From Star
oh,
Fox.
it's so popular now. If you play the Switch and go online with it,
Mm-hmm.
it's a huge community. Like I
It's
was
not.
confused when I played it for like a week or two. I was like, where do I start this damn thing? That's how confused I was because
It it became a thing. It became a thing whereby people were creating their so-called land party with the game console, where people were doing competition. I remember out in Brooklyn, there were a couple of locations out here in Brooklyn near Cornell and other places. They were holding tournament for Smash Bros. That's how big it was. Would lead into the fighting game arena we have today. The Smash Bros, the Tekken, the Mortal Kombat, and the Street Fighter were the top four fighting games. Smash Bros was more competitive, more entertaining because you could have more than one people competing in it, and it was more lively in that type of arena than what it was. But still, Nintendo found a way of keeping that anchor in the gaming industry because they were never going to go nowhere. They were the true OGs of the OGs of original ideas. Now, when we had the latest game console go rub people the wrong way due to the pricing, and people were not feeling that. But all the other past game console, Nintendo is the best game console that ever came out. So Nintendo was considered to be the second best for the library it have of games it had. Nintendo 64 had potential, but I realized they made some mistakes, so they scratched out that idea to go straight to GameCube. GameCube was the launching pad for the Wii because even though they were doing a lot of things, no, we went to the launching pad. How would I put it? They did GameCube to compete with PlayStation and Sega CDs slash Dreamcast. So everybody was doing the CD disc. Remember, when Nintendo first started, everything was cartridge. Atari was cartridge too. Atari was worse than Nintendo. It was a thick ass cartridge that you had to to get it work. Nintendo did did a technique with the Paul know this once. He hang out with his with Eric. And then you need technique on the Nintendo cartridge. You either blow on the top one, blow at the bottom. Just do this. You have to either you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Slide it directly. Don't jam it. Press it down. Close
David,
it.
this is not a
Or your
X-ray
finger.
show. Let's back it up a
No,
little bit.
no, no. Oh, you don't
I
understand.
know,
It's a
but
ritual.
here's a funny thing. I read a whole article about that recently. The whole blowing, waving in the air, all that stuff we used to do the cockroach. That was a waste of time because the only thing you had to do is
I
take it out
know.
and put it back in and line up the pins. That's what it was. The pins were not lining up.
But Mr. Bennett noted in the black community, it's like a ritual.
Mhm.
Even
Among
even
black
for white
people,
people, you had to blow it
no,
3 times.
we
Then you go. You take the step to the left, step to the right. Then you stomp once, stomp twice, blow again. You do the hokey pokey. Then you plug it in. That's how it works.
that's what we were more
Yeah.
which it was more like it was more like a
No,
ritual for black folk
I
because
know that. I was
they
making
would
fun of you right
they
now,
tell you
Paul.
don't
I
drink
mean,
it.
David. I was just
Hey
making
guys,
fun of you.
I want to ask a question. Like I said, you guys are getting into ether that I'm not on, so I may wrap up early. I did have a question for you guys because I know that for all these gaming consoles that were out, a lot of them were ported to multiple consoles.
Mm-hmm.
What, in your view, if you had the opportunity to play multiple consoles, which console, counting for similar, I'm talking about those on equal generation now. So I'm not talking about comparing an NES to a 64 or a console, but when those games came out, especially a lot of the sports titles or whatever that was available on Xbox, Sony, PlayStations, which console in your view did it best in terms of gameplay, factor in the controllers, factor in the graphics, where there's like stutters or skips or something like that. Was there a console from your recollection that just did a better job? If you were to go game for game for the same game, different consoles, which port consistently cranked out the better games?
David, you want to go first, or want me to do it?
I'll go first because when he mentioned that question, that is very challenging. I would have to say I would have to give it to the PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3 at the time because we didn't want to figure out a way make the game function properly, even though it was a cheat to the Need for Speed or the Midnight Club Edition game, where only in PlayStation they allow you to do this. You can start the game, go into your rating, you can pause it. If you don't like the soundtrack the game is playing, you can bring your favorite CD, plug it in, and enjoy the soundtrack of your favorite music CD while you're playing that racing game. That was the thing. Sony was consistent with that, but they created their console to have extra more flexibility that later on you start to find out what you can do with it. That was just me. Yeah, they did it very public well, and the thing about it, I say it does well. The PlayStation 2 had some advantage where it allowed you to play Japanese game onto American game console, along you have the extra
Mhm.
adapter, allowed to convert it. That's where people were drawn to the PlayStation more because they found out there was a much bigger library in Japan compared to the US, which allow you to hold your console more for those things. That is my that is my 2 cents. I don't know about everybody else because I know about the Xbox have the Wing of Death and all the other craziness going on because the way they built a console, it was feeling far more than PlayStation was feeling.
Gotcha.
That that's my thing because you asked an excellent question that had me thinking like, what were the console people hold on the longest? With the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3. Because there was so many games that people were trying to send their friend to go down to Chinatown because it's a Japanese version so they can copy it and it was ridiculous. We did a debate about it and we did our research and we found out there was a huge, massive library that was excluded from the US, with either if you look in the UK library or the Japanese library. So that would make people want to hold their counsel more because there were too many games to dibble and dabble. So that's my thing. Go ahead.
So hands down is a PS2. I don't care what anybody says. PS2 hands down. Why? Well, where should I start? Where should I end? Let's go to the games first. You had Tony Hawk. You had Metal Gear. You have Grand Theft Auto. You have Grand Tour. You have Devil May Cry. You got all the football games. You got the birth of Call of Duty. They're starting doing online gaming. That's only the beginning. God of War. Those only the start of it. The controller was very comfortable, very herbal. Bro, if I tell you I threw that controller so many times against the wall that thing didn't want to die once.
Hmm.
And listen, I was a kid and I had like I died. Like cheater, and like whatever. And like, as a kid we abuse our shit. You know that. That survived all that
Hmm.
abuse. Memory cards weren't
Hmm.
expensive.
But mind you, the question though, the question I'm asking, I'm talking about specific cases where a major game, is available across multiple platforms.
Street
Which
Fighter.
platform rendered the game from gameplay? What was the easiest to play on? Because I got all the sports games. Like Madden was on every games. When the wrestling games started coming out, when WWE started coming out with the wrestling titles, they were available on
Yeah,
every platform. They
SmackDown and
didn't.
so on.
No platform had an exclusive right on the game. So again, was there a console that
Right.
that it was just easier to play that game on that console? The graphics were smoother. You didn't have as many glitches. The
And I
controller was
agree
more
with you.
comfortable. The
And I would
what
say,
yeah.
and again, my statement still say the same. It's the PlayStation. The
But
controller's
okay.
better.
Now, because you were talking about like just a different, you were just talking about the number of titles that it had, and that
Yeah,
again, I just wanted that wasn't the question. I'm saying for the
yeah.
same
I
title,
use Tony Hawk. That was on
Well,
all the platforms.
and you prefer playing it on the PS2.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's my
It
my
was
question. Yeah,
more
that's
comfortable,
now,
my question.
smoother. When you did the tricks, when you did it, it was easier versus, the way the controller. I'm not saying that the Nintendo controller is bad. It just feels a lot better in my hands. And I had the same conversation with CQ, who has a very serious injury in his hands. He cannot play it as well on a PlayStation or Nintendo controller. He needs an Xbox. It feels more comfortable on his hands. And that's the argument me and him go back and forth all day long. Xbox versus PlayStation, PlayStation versus Nintendo. This is an argument of millenniums. And I don't think we're never going to have the answer to that. It's preference at the end of
now, now, I will add to this because I'm glad Mr. Paul Bennett asked that question because if you're from New York City, I mean, you hear about friend gathering. People gathering more at people's home who had the PlayStation 2 more than people who had their Xbox. Because even though they have the thing there across multiple platforms, it was more comfortable or more greater fun on a PlayStation 2 than that of the Xbox. That was that was well known, especially out here in Brooklyn. You have the game party on weekend where you bring your friends over and everybody will take turn to play again with mostly on the PlayStation. The only time you want to play on Xbox and for the Call of Duty was even though it was exclusive, but it wasn't all that great. Unlike PlayStation, you can play all type again. You were playing you play competition in your home on the PS2 more than any other console. That's what it was. It was properly ported. Plus, like I said, they came with a lot of expansive tools to come along with it that made it great. When you talk about the network gaming, they pushed that with PlayStation first before. Microsoft came in and joined into the mix of it. The PS3 was more the threat to the Xbox competition because the system itself was too pricey. The amount of work R&D they put into the PlayStation 3, it was ahead of its time. But they made a loss on the console because if they would have put the actual price for the PlayStation 3, not too many people would buy it. So they made up by making the money off the game itself. So since they couldn't get back the money from the console itself, they got back the money back from the game they produced. No, you can shake your head all you
No, the
want.
reason I'm shaking my
They want
head,
the
the reason I'm shaking my head, every console that launches, every company loses money. Hands down.
I agree with you, but not as much as Sony. The technology they have in the PlayStation 3 were too advanced, and they realize they can't do that again. So when they go to how to put it, when all the gaming kind of created the next console, Sony was a Japanese company
I argue that bit.
that would
I agree.
always that was so ahead when it comes to technology. They wanted to do something that would destroy the competition. When they did the PS3, they didn't realize they put too much into that game console that many people could not comprehend what they were dealing with. At first, developer wanted to leave the PlayStation to go to the Xbox, not realize. So they created a platform for them to not put their best work, but to make sure, like Mr. Bennett was saying, it was played properly well. PS3 did that. When other developers start to catch on to it, they start telling the developers, yo, build the game on this console, it's even better. That is when the library started to expand more and more on the PlayStation 3 side compared to the Xbox. Xbox was going behind back door trying to get exclusive game from PlayStation 3 to come on their platform. That's how bad it was.
And don't forget, David, they lost a lot of exclusives after during the Switch, not Switch, the Wii era, like Nintendo. I mean, the cross platforms. They didn't want to be part of that for a while. That's why Call of Duty got pulled off that platform.
Call of Duty was something that was an agreement between both the Sony and Microsoft. Nintendo wanted to be all exclusive, but they didn't realize when you do that, you hurt its market. Remember, Nintendo was the OG game console long before Sony, long before Microsoft. Microsoft jumped into the game because when Sega lost to PlayStation, there was no competition for the PlayStation, and Nintendo was just coasting. So what did Microsoft did? Okay, we will come in and take over where Sega left off. Even I was saying Microsoft was a joke because the first Xbox was nothing but another PC in a box. And a lot of the tech head was showing you how you can build your own Xbox. It was no different from building a PC. So what happened? They trying to do better than that and they get the Xbox 360, even though they're trying to hide it, it was still almost like a PC, but you can still
What
figure it
system?
out.
What's this talking about?
The first Xbox was more of a PC. The second Xbox was the Xbox 360. They were trying to hide it that it's not like a PC, even though when you take it apart, it's almost similar
Oh
to a
yeah,
PC.
the newer systems are definitely like a PC. And like rumors going on right now, Xbox might be stepping away from consoles and just doing games because
Yeah, because of the loss of production. When you're
absolutely.
doing the game counts, because remember you mentioned before R&D, research and development, it was not a joke. Microsoft thought they can gain the market of competing, not realizing you're just cheating people out with the console when nothing more than a PC. Because a lot of Microsoft games were built for Microsoft only, whereby either you play on the console or you play on your PC. What was the
There's
difference?
no difference really.
Yeah. And Microsoft was always like late to the game. Like they tried to get in on the phone market after iPhone launched, and Microsoft
Oh,
came out with a phone, and
See, the-
so they were just thinking because we're Microsoft, we could just sort of just jump in They were never there at the inception. They never really created.
And
Here's the funny part about that, Paul.
new.
Me and CQ just had this conversation about 2 weeks ago. Xbox, you're right. Xbox is always a late to the game. I mean, Microsoft's late to the game. Phone, this, that. They have tried a lot of things and failed, except in one thing: the gaming industry. They actually, that's one system that feel they came in late to the game. They butter their nose, like, yo, I'm in, homeboy. What are you gonna do about it? And they did not lose a beat about it. Now it went from Nintendo versus Sony, kind of like, oh, which one's better? Now it's more, yeah, you talk about Nintendo, but it's not really part of the argument anymore. It's Sony versus PlayStation. I mean, Sony versus Xbox. That's the biggest argument now.
the issue was Bill Gates want to dominate the gaming industry, so he put a lot
Never
in
gonna
the
happen,
budget
bro.
to compete.
Like I
And
said, you did the same thing with the phones.
the
They
phone,
keep trying to
was-
come out with the smartphone. It was
the
the same
phone was
thing.
even worse than the game console.
Yeah.
You know about the tech head, and I bet you we have gotten. I'm sure you bump head with people who think, "Oh, the Microsoft phone," and you were telling them, "Not what it
The
is."
App Store had virtually no titles. I mean, literally, at one point, they might have had like a couple dozen titles.
Couple dozen.
So far less than the Apple Store, far less than Google or Android. I mean, again, without the titles, you're dead. I mean, same thing with the gaming consoles.
But
You're really defined by the titles that you
Absolutely.
produce to get the most out of that console. And if you can't deliver that, now again, TurboGrafx 16, perfect example of that. They came out, they were, on par technically with the Sega Genesis, maybe a little bit better, but they had trouble with titles. They couldn't you got to get people on board. You got to get guys who are enthusiastic. You got to get the creatives to really create good games that draw people to your system. You're going to have your ports over multiple games, like NBA, all these, exclusive deals. They want to sell to everybody, so they're going to make deals. But again, what is going to distinguish you from everybody else? And I just don't think, like the TurboGrafx, I don't think they really got off the ground because they didn't distinguish themselves enough. So Microsoft has always had that
but let,
history of joining late for
let
sure.
me pick your mind about that. What the more common thing about the game console that we all know about with the operating system, right? Issue with the operating system, if it worked well with the hardware that's built in that console. Am I correct? The same philosophy applied to the phone. But you and I both know this. Microsoft Windows was either a vampire, whereby it don't know how to control its resource, whatever device you put it on, or it will be a glitch headache. When they designed that Windows phone, I was calling it out from the get go. Microsoft not going to survive because you remember I went from Windows 95, Windows 98,
See
Windows
that? Well,
NT. There was a mix match of which operating was stable or which operating was just defined.
NT for years. NT was the most. Now again, it's an unfair question because again, you can slap the title of Microsoft on it, but obviously the latest versions, 10 and 11, those are basically what's that system? The Linux based.
Mhm.
So again, you can't say it's not an original. Now again, none of these systems are original out the box. Everybody stole, especially during the IT wars back then. Everybody stole everything. So I think Xerox might have came out with the first graphical user interface that Apple stole. So they all stole off each other. So
Oh,
again,
look
I
at
don't think
example.
there's anything
Android
unique
versus
about that.
Apple. They still back and forth for each other all the time. And now with
Yeah.
Well,
hang on. Now with the RCA out there, it doesn't make a difference if you have Apple or Android. You can communicate with everybody the same anymore now. Maybe you won't have FaceTime and some other features, but there's a loop around. I can use Hangout instead. Whoo! So
Yeah, WhatsApp
but
or
but
whatever.
but here's the thing: when he mentioned the Windows phone main issue was performance because this operating system for that phone was consuming the resource. And you know the bad part about the Windows phone, you couldn't upgrade the RAM if you wanted to, or upgrade them or the store because the way that system was designed, it was poor in
but
performance.
you
It was poor
also
in
need to
execution.
remember the era of the phone coming out was different back then than now. Now you can even upgrade the RAM if you wanted to. You can't even take apart your phone and
Yeah, no phone. Yeah, no phone. You can't change the battery, nor can you upgrade the RAM.
there were a
Everything's
few.
locked. I'm just saying, but they were just bad out the gate. Like I said, the technology of the phone is one thing, which for most tech heads, I mean, that would be a problem for us. You know what I'm saying? But the real issue was the titles. Their store, their app store, was paltry because they couldn't get a decent amount of the major guys to say, okay, we will port to your phone. Until you get the major guys on, you're not gonna do well in the market. Only the serious tech heads will care about phone glitches or performance. You know, we're the ones who will run the performance softwares and stuff like that. But again, if you don't have titles that people want, um, especially as gaming on the phones, again, I talked about that as well. I was a computer game for a while. Now, if I game at all, it's on my phone more so than anything. So, unless you're gonna have those guys on board churning out stuff that people want, you're not gonna last very long, and they didn't.
And that's the thing that applied to the gaming content. It was the same fundamental. If you can get the main people to build game for your system, you are doomed.
Absolutely. But before we move on, guys, I want to backtrack with a video for a second here because we kind of went off topic a little bit, and I think you guys are gonna like this video.
Okay, you play that one. I'll be on for. I got about 5-10 minutes left, and when
All right, that's
I
fine.
jump off. So go ahead.
Did you know that Nintendo was founded way back in 1889, initially producing handmade Hanafuda cards, which are Japanese playing cards? The company's name, Nintendo, roughly translates to leave luck to heaven, or in heaven's hands, which is pretty mind-blowing. Nintendo's first arcade game, Computer Othello, was released in 1978, and it was a huge success. But what's even more amazing is that the iconic character Mario was originally called Jumpman when he first appeared in the arcade game Donkey Kong in 1981. Nintendo's iconic Game Boy was the first handheld console to sell over 100 million units worldwide. The Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, had a built-in lockout chip that prevented unauthorized games from being played on the console, which was a major game changer in the industry. Nintendo is still one of the most successful gaming companies in the world, and the Switch is its best-selling console to date, with over 122 million units sold worldwide. Did you know that Nintendo...
Before we move on, I also want to mention, I think it's kind of hilarious what we were saying before. Nintendo is made in Japan, right? The HQ. What is also in Japan? Sony. So I think it's kind of hilarious. They're both in the same country and they're fighting each other, and I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Japan
Yeah,
is
that's good.
all
Yeah, it's
about competition. Competition make them perfect
Oh yes,
themselves.
healthy
I
competition.
gotta get them.
But think about the TVs. How many of those TVs, Sony TVs,
What?
versus how many of those companies were Japanese companies?
Oh my god.
Sony was Japanese. Panasonic, I believe. I'm not sure.
Is that still around?
Uh, Samsung is South Korea that I know of.
Only two TV companies I trust personally. I don't care how much expensive they are. I'll buy them any day of the week. It's personal preference. I know you you have a little different opinion, Paul. We had talked before. Is Sony or Samsung? Those are only two brands I buy. And oh my god, what's the other one called?
Hitachi. Hitachi is also Japanese, right?
LG,
LG. Yeah.
me LG TV, or right now it's Sony, Samsung, LG, and
LG. That's the other one. Those are three companies I trust. LG. Because LG, you can get a nice 85-inch for a good price.
but my thing is this: Sony and Samsung, I call them cheap because they've been working with each other side by side for a long period of time, and they have what they call the gentleman agreement. Doesn't matter who's leading the way; they both profit from each other. Sony TV have been considered the king of TV for a long period of time, but before Sony, there was Zenith, there was JVC, there was RCA. Remember those TVs, Mr. Bennett?
I remember RCA. I had a couple of them.
I can't remember where they were from. 'Cause I never got a chance to research. I think we would have to have a content about these TV companies. that we were familiar with before they die out and or they got bought out or replaced.
Yeah, yeah. Then you had
Thank
JVC.
you.
You had yeah, that was another
I
one.
know, I know
Shop
exactly what
Shop
Panasonic's
T
around, but
Shop TV. Yeah.
Quasar.
Shop
Panasonic and RCA still makes TV, but they're very low end TVs now. They're not like Samsung quality anymore.
what about Shop TV? That's another company.
Sharp. Yeah, yeah.
Because if anybody TV, they start to change their technology because of the gaming industry were picking up heavy. So they had to make sure that TV were compatible with the game console. That's a fun thing we never think about it. The gaming console changed the market for the TV companies big time. Because when people were buying game console, they were buying the TV that was more compatible with it. And what are the
Now
go
let me
ahead.
ask you guys. This is my last question of the night before I go. Are the current gaming
Mhm.
consoles are they optimized for 4K or whatever that level gradient is for graphic wise? Are they to that level? Or are they still not taking advantage of what these 4K and in the future these
I put
8K
it this
sets are
way:
going to be
my
taking advantage
my
of?
PS5 can play 8K very easily, no problem. The hertz is so high, it's not even funny. So most TVs cannot even keep up with the gaming systems. That's why they tell you get a gaming monitor or a smaller TV.
Do you need like a 240? Well, like most standard HD TVs are still running 120 hertz. The high end are like 240. You
240
need
easily, yeah.
so you're saying you need like a 240 to
Oh yeah,
play some of these
easily.
games?
Now I would say that the first one I
Gotcha.
started with the PlayStation 4 Pro. They had the PlayStation original and they had a 4 Pro. The 4 Pro was collected with the high end. Well, designed for high end TV, which means Samsung high end TV, Sony high end TV, the Bravo brand, whatsoever, as well the LG. Now, when he mentioned the PS5, now they're doing the same thing with the PS5. They have a PS5 Pro. The PS5 was originally designed to go up to 8K, but not too many 8K TV out there. The PS5 Pro probably be a booster for that to handle such graphic. Now, mind you, there's not a lot of TV that can handle that type of workload. Now, when you talk about gaming monitor, here where it gets tricky. When you look at the price of the gaming monitors, it did not match to the size of the TV that matched their price. Which, independent, you're a tech guy, I am. If you were to look for the best TV you find out there, look for that same price and look for the gaming monitor. It won't be the same size, it'll
Hmm.
be much smaller or wider, so to speak, just for that same part. But the refresh rate is ridiculous. It'd be 240 to 360.
Uh, David, for great example, Viso. A lot of people love that brand. It's a really good brand. I personally I'm not a fan of that brand.
Which
Anytime I
brand?
hear V Vizon, Vizion, I'm like, I'm not personal to that brand. I from my research, it's pretty much a low grade of a Samsung, and there's always issues with it. I hear.
Oh, Vizio. It's
Yeah.
Vizio.
Yes.
I'm like, what do you call it? Video was the budget brand. That was the budget to hope to the people who cannot afford that high-end TV. I remember to work in Walmart, and that sold a lot. The video was crap.
But it's been blowing up all over the place. A lot of people are buying them like crazy because of how cheap they are. Don't you have one of the brand, Paul?
Which one?
Vizio?
Video TV.
No, I don't think so.
Video was a
Vision,
cheap
no,
cheap
not that I'm aware
brand
of.
of Sony, I believe, right? Was it?
Samsung, I thought.
Sorry.
Now, I mean, I have I bought like a 75-inch set. I forget the name of the country. Sensei or Sensui,
Sensui. S
which
A
is
N S U
yeah,
I.
it's a Japanese. Correct. Yeah, I have that. Yeah, it was like one of those Christmas Day, Black Friday sales or whatever. So it was like $200. So I just grabbed it because my 50-inch I had a set win, so I just grabbed something just to grab it. So yeah, so I'm not. Yeah, I can't. I at this point I can't justify spending like $4,000 or $5,000 for a set.
And
Yeah,
that's where the issue
that's
come
that.
to play. And unless you're a football head, that is where they make the money of people who want to have a super crisp, high definition TV so they can enjoy the football.
No, pushback on that. Not only football fans. You got gamers too. Some gamers will pay for 85
Yeah,
inch. Like
yeah, I know.
this monitor is technically a gaming monitor that I'm working on right now. It's a 49-inch curved gaming monitor, but I personally like using it for streaming. You can use it whatever. Boss Man uses a similar same one. I have the newer version. He has the older one. Whatever.
Which one? Samsung?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I have the curved.
Hey guys,
All right, Paul. Have a good night, my man. I'll see you tomorrow.
You too. I got one more question, and again, this might not be the proper forum for it, but I got one more. You guys talk about it offline. There was throughout the gaming industry, no one talks about it much, but there was a series, especially in Japan, it really happened big, where you had folks, they used to put warnings on video games because of the seizures that kids would get. I know there was a big incident in Japan that might have been like in the late 80s, early 90s, where a lot of these folks were like, because all the things going on in the game, and kids would get like.
Oh, I know you're talking about the lights.
So I don't know if you guys remember that, if y'all remember that time or whatever, or has that something that's happened recently, especially now that these games are getting more graphically intense and loaded and whatnot. Is that still something? But I remember that I think they, for a time, if I recall, some of these games have warning labels on the games to say this could cause some seizures or some activities or whatnot. So I don't know if you guys remember that. Chop it up. I'll be listening on the back end. But I'll see you, Pete.
All right, man. Have a good night.
I believe it has something to do with
Right,
the
take care.
TV technology for the blue light, because for one, these are games that have heavy graphics and it requires a faster processor. I remember there was a thing when we could tell people when you're playing game on these big TVs, you cannot sit close to it, you gotta sit far back. And there had to be a certain amount of distance. The reason why I'm saying that, because there's one of these engineers who work with the FBI talk about how these little LED, OLED TV, LCD TV were doing something whereby it was affecting people's mind. That was the blue light. Now, and I don't think anybody noticed this. The only way you won't have that effect of it, if we have those from the 36-inch TV all the way to the 85-inch TV, you cannot, and I repeat, you cannot be so close to the TV. You got to be far back. We want to say you have to be
It
far
is
back from the
funny you
TV.
said that because back in the day, your parents would say, "Get away from the TV. You're gonna destroy your eyes." And
Bingo.
it was never your eyes thing.
But it messed with the brain. But you know that the TV issue came into play because based on the exposure of blue light being flashed out through the TV, the closer you are to the TV, the more affected. If you notice, I'm wearing a particular glass on my eye. This is the Gunner glass. Even the monitor have blue light. When you in front of the computer for too long, doing what I'm doing as a tech guy, it messes with your eye whatsoever. So when you have these type of special glasses, with the Gunner glass, is the company that sells these things, it protects you from blue light whatsoever from affecting your eyes. This is why when I say if I will get a big ass TV, I have a 65-inch TV, I cannot sit close. I want to be far away from the TV. Because when you're far away from the TV, you know that you don't feel the effect of the light on your eye. But for so many idiotic individuals, from young to old, who want to be close to it, more than likely they're deteriorating their eyesight over a period of time. I found out about it being a tech guy because we start to realize certain thing about the exposure of the blue light from the TV wasn't safe, but we had the same issue with the monitor. Now, if you look at the computer monitor, the basic one is running at 60 hertz. So imagine with the one behind my back that's running at 144, which is the old school one compared to the new one, the 240 or 360. The level of blue lights that come up on these monitors are dangerous. But Acer, which is the brand I'm using, they have a way we can adjust it. Center on your phone, I have a setting where I remove the blue light off my phone. Because when you're not careful, you have a bunch of not realizing you're affecting your brain, so that will cause diseases. What happened in Japan? Japan pinned down what would cause it, and they knew what it was. Too many kids, too many people into the gaming, they want to be all up in the screen.
David, look at this monitor I'm on right now. This is like it's probably double what you have on your old one. This is the newer monitor, and this like as much as you're joking around. That's why I start wearing my glasses a lot more. These are blue a blue laser or whatever they call it. It has this film over them that
Hmm.
prevents the blue light to bother my eyes.
And this is my second pair of the Gunner Glide. I had the first pair a couple of years ago, and I loved it. It was very comfortable, and I broke the lens by accident, so I had to buy me another one. This one is worth it. You go to the website called Gunner, is Gunner. They sell all type of different fashion of these type of computer glasses, but it's very comfortable for the eye. I highly recommend it to anybody who's been in front of the screen almost for a long time, even at work. So I gotta have it on because for one, people don't understand the FBI with the company and the design the screen in order of I hate to say it to control people where of buying, where of behave. It's like I can't call it mind control, but they figure out how to trigger people to do certain things with it. My thing is the strain they put on your eye. That's why I'm never a fan being in front of a high end TV. Like the biggest one I have at Samsung was 85 inch, 95 inch. You gotta put that bad boy on a wall. I gotta stay at least 10, 15 feet away. I can't be that close.
Hmm.
So it won't affect my eyesight. But everybody don't want to be so close. I think you might well go ahead and be a blind bat because I'm not gonna help you when you turn blind. I'm like deuces. And you said yourself back in the day, they would tell you, don't be close to the TV, don't be close to the TV. And I had to learn that. But even at the nerdy at I thought to know when you close to the TV, the level of strain it does to the eye, it really does that. And I always trying to catch. I said, when do what happen when I move back? The further I move away from the TV, the less strain I add to the point whereby it's almost non-existent. So I don't have to worry about it. And I enjoy watching TV from a distance. For some people, I could never fathom why would it be so close and damage your eye. Look, you know how much money it costs to recorrect your eyes or the laser treatment? It's ridiculous.
As kids, we didn't know any better, bro. Like we just want to be cool. The trends back then were different than now. Like, listen, I think that's okay being close to the TV than eating Tide Pods like these kids are doing nowadays.
I don't think with a trend because I caught on earlier as a kid because when your eye start to be you don't understand. When you have to read, you start to know what is wrong with you when you be close to the TV and you having a hard time reading your own book. But when you start to stay far
You don't understand.
away, when you have to read, you start to know what is wrong with you when you have to be far away from the TV. You have to realize it's less stressful. This is why I don't feel sorry for people. When your parents tell you stay away from the TV, don't be too close, there's a reason behind it. I was a very curious kid. The same when they say don't play with fire. So when your parents say don't play, you will continue to play with fire? Oh, let's see. I'm like seriously,
Oh,
like
fireworks! Don't play with fireworks. And you're like, you light one, and you go, ooh, throw it, throw it, throw.
I
Ooh,
I
throw
got I
it,
got
throw
to
it.
I got something better. Don't try to surf on a bus on a subway train. That have been warned to the youth for more than a decade, but yet you have a new generation of idiots who want to subway surf with. I hate to say this, ladies and gentlemen. If you're a parent and your child is subway surfing or bus surfing, and you happen to reduce the amount of idiot you have to deal with.
Okay, bus surfing like or surfing like jumping on top and like
I'm bus surfing is
like
more like they
skiing
climb
rope.
on the back. They climb on the back of the bus and stand
Okay,
behind it. Subway surfing was on the time go on top by going to the tunnel.
surfing in
I
general to me is when you're on top of the car, like they did in Teen Wolf.
well, a young girl was doing that recently, and she lost her life. But I do not feel sorry for her because she needs new generation of kids want to do some of the most dumbest thing that could cost them life. And I'm like, hey, it's what it is. To each his own. If you want to do something dangerous, then by all means, you can go ahead. All you doing is eliminate the time we have to deal when we trying to warn you But since you want to take advice from somebody who wants you to live longer, you might well just do what you gotta do and leave the earth so we have less trouble. This is why a lot of technology that be pumping out, people don't understand what it's doing to
I think we're getting to a point with technology right now. It's starting to slow down again. Because look, cell phones are a great example. And let's get back on topic after this. Is cell phones are in a stalemate right now.
you.
You
No,
don't think so?
exactly. No.
I disagree 100% on that one.
You're talking to a tech head who have seen cell phone on the Android side of things had expand on a whole new level. The only thing that have slowed down, literally, is the iPhone.
iPhone's always been a little slower than anybody else.
Yeah, but for Android phone, there have been too many selection based on different demographics. We have phone for people who just want to take pictures. Want to take the best picture can. There's a bunch of phone for that. There are phone for people who want to play game on the phone. There are a bunch of phone for that. There are phone for business aspect. There's a bunch
So the
of
only
phone
two
for that.
phones that I would say that make a difference is iPhone and Samsung. Those are the only two ones that are major players in my eyes. You can disagree with that. That's fine. I'll let you disagree.
Samsung is one. The other one is OnePlus.
I have never any store I've been into, they did never carry them.
There's a lot of people that carry them. It depends on the carrier. But
I've
the
been to
problem is,
Verizon. I've been to AT&T. That I think is the worst company in the world. T-Mobile. I've been to. None of them carry it. I never seen it in any stores.
T-Mobile have OnePlus. It's just based on what model you're looking for. Sometimes it's a promotion. But what I've been
I'm
noticing
not
right
arguing
now,
that. But what
but
I am arguing with, I think they have a statement. Like look the last two Samsung phones, Samsung 24 and 25. There was no upgrades. It's all in the AI that did the upgrades. So they were literally, YouTubers like ourselves said, skip this version if you need to upgrade. If you need an upgrade so bad, just upgrade the last year's model. You save a few $100. No difference.
and thing is, it's not just that. There's a bunch of tech YouTubers who got a bunch of other reference besides Samsung and iPhone. Even though iPhone is losing the battle on a global stage, the only help they have in the U.S. because
You know the funny thing, bro. I want to cut you off. I'm sorry. It's funny when you say that because I've been doing the research on that for a while because I really want to do a show, another show again, Android versus iPhone, upgrade version of it. And I don't know if I can get CQ on this time because CQ is a little. He's a busy man that he took. He's a president of WFT Nation now. So we're the little people versus the big people like him. But no, joking aside, um, we we are different because I don't refer to that. The phone market has changed. I'm sorry. I'll tell you why. Because after Steve Jobs died, the iPhone got very stale. They haven't really done a lot of upgrades. It's very slow. This year, the new one is coming out. They're going to be a big upgrade. They say, but I hear this every fucking year. But on the other side of note of that is now you have the market has evolved too. Does that make
the
sense what I'm trying to say?
the the phone market had evolved for the past 5 to 10 years. There's only 2 to 3 YouTubers who do awards for the best phone or multiple category. There
Yeah,
is
Mr. Boss is one of them.
Mr. Hudabolt is the number one. Second
And
one is
Samsung
Market.
usually wins all the award, most of the awards. I'm not arguing that.
I know there's Market HD, and there's another one called
But
Super
what I am
Staff.
arguing with you right now that Apple is winning right and left, and that hasn't changed anything. It's very
And
stale. It doesn't matter if
the
you have iPhone 10 or to the 16.
the problem of the staleness is that they feel like there's no competition, but they're just lying to themselves for the simple fact there is a lot of competition.
Oh, it's humongous.
Thank to Mr. Hudabolt, Super Staff, and Market AD. They have, I had to say, Market AD and Mr. Hudabolt anyway. They give awards. And a lot of companies are listening to their objective
Podcast.
feedback on their phone. Market AD, who was at one point what the Apple guy, had to admit Apple don't do much with their phone. But there are so many other competition that are even doing better. The Google Pixel phone is doing better than the iPhone. I'm
Pixel,
looking below.
I actually had it in one of my hands because one of my ex girlfriends had one, the Fold actually, and it's very a very watered down, dumb version of a Samsung, pretty much.
It's watered down because they call it considered the bloatware. That was the
Yeah,
issue behind it.
I'm not arguing again. I agree 100%. We're agreeing what we're saying. We're just saying two different ways. The only thing I am literally pushing back on is Apple. It's higher in the market right now than it. I'm starting to see slowly people are starting going slowly back to Samsungs and
No,
Android phones.
and let me and one thing I told you before in the past, behind closed doors, Apple's only high because one, the United States government is supporting Apple to keep its market value up.
I don't think that's the
And,
reason.
and no, you know, let me explain to you why. I've told people several times before about iPhone. iPhone is a glorified mid-range phone that been deceiving the public as if it was a high-end phone, which it's not, spec-wise. Because
I'm not arguing.
at the end of the day, there's other company caught on to this more than a decade, and they call them out for the longest. Like there's nothing great about the iPhone. If
And
you
again,
want
I'm not
to,
arguing.
if you want to compare not the performance but functionality wise, there are too many phones out there that will beat the iPhone in any category, and there's nothing can do about it.
So
The problem, the
with
problem is the marketing.
no. The only good thing with the iPhone is a couple things. All right, it's cool. Kids think it's cool. Very simple, right? Because all the celebrities have it. Hang on. You know I'm right. You know I'm right. Don't argue. If I'm right, don't argue. Am I wrong?
Uh, They claim to be that it's cool, but it's not so cool.
For you, but for kids are coming up, not a lot of kids will grab it at Samsung. They'll go for the fucking iPhone, bro. Second reason people go for the iPhone is the connectability. Like it's easier to connect with somebody like me and Paul have iPhones. Very easy to go back and forth. Yes, RCA made it easier with Android, but before that, if you was a bubble thing, come on, think about it, bro. You know I'm right. Like King, he's a big Android user, but he uses an iPhone because of his daughter mostly. He can FaceTime her, he can communicate, he can track where she's at. It's a lot easier to do through an iPhone versus a Samsung. If you're not a tech person, trust me, King's not a tech person. You see how many times he crashed his stream? Do I need to say more? I love you, King, but damn, dude. But he is a Android hardcore person. But again, the connectability, you cannot go wrong with the AirPods, the watches, the air tags. Yes, Samsung has them, but it's easier to work through as Apple. They found a look. They have the loophole, but the problem they're having right now is a big lawsuit they're having from the justice system, I think is, or whatever it is, because they're calling it a monopoly now, and it kind of is. Think about it. It kind of is. You cannot bring an Apple Watch to put on Android. I know people are arguing with me today about it the last couple of days. Yeah, you can. Like, no, you cannot. The way that iPhone, because Apple Watch is made, it blocks it to get onto an Android. And then Apple has a return statement says, we've been trying, but we can't figure it out.
No, here's the thing with Apple. Apple trying to make it whereby they want to bend the rules whereby you got to do things their way. They've been doing that for more than a decade. So it's like a waste of time trying to configure that iPhone because let's be real. Perfect example in corporate sector. To configure an iPhone to the corporate arena, it's more of a headache compared to the Android. Android not only more stable to configure, but also more secure. They say iPhone is secure on the business sector. It never have been because a lot of people don't keep missing this. But the BlackBerry encryption software is embedded in Samsung Knox. Which means, technically speaking, if BlackBerry had the most secure encryption software and it's given to Samsung Knox, that made the Samsung phone far more secure than the iPhone, but a lot of people don't really do their homework, don't read. They rather go for the dumbest phone that being hacked most of the time. Is what it is.
I have
I
never heard an iPhone get hacked, to be honest with you.
um let me refresh your memories. What happened to all the celebrities talk about how their provocative picture got stolen from their phones, or it pop up every now and then to the tabloid. They don't know how they got that thing got hacked into. Yet it been the iPhone. A lot of celebrities, a lot of people who have their personal information taken from their phone, it comes in down there with iPhone. It's never been an Android phone. Never have been. That's the issue. Plus, technically speaking, for the United States government, the most secure phone to use for federal official was the Samsung phone to this day. It never been the iPhone.
Every president that I have seen always using an iPhone. I'm not arguing something I don't
No,
know. I'm not
no.
arguing. I just don't know.
Barack Obama and Joe Biden was 19 on iPhone. They was not allowed to. It was actually a cell phone, Samsung phone. It was Donald Trump who was trying to use the iPhone, and they warned him about it before that with the BlackBerry.
BlackBerry, I know it was very secure. That I do know.
And that's what I'm saying. That after that, they switched to the Samsung because it had been tested by the United States government, federal government. The most secure phone for their federal government official was Samsung phone, was never an iPhone to begin with. They got itchy with iPhone security.
Again,
Samsung
I've
does
never
not.
heard of the issue of any security. I know when I got locked out of my iPhone, I lost my Apple ID.
I know,
Bro, that was a nightmare and a half.
but
Wait, hang
remember
on,
that. Okay,
hang on, let me finish first before you jump in. The nightmare of that was I went down to the store. The store told me to send me to Apple Store. Apple Store sent me to customer service. I got called on my home. I called them, and they were literally telling me, nope, 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 nope. You have to wait 2 weeks to get it back. That's protocol.
and that was never the issue with Samsung. Remember what I said before. Samsung had the same encryption software with BlackBerry. Apple does not have that, which
And
is
well,
why,
yes, you're 100% right. They have a Google
but
Meet, and I mentioned that earlier.
which was why it will continue to be the required encryption security that the government need. iPhone never matched that. That's always has been a given. So that's why when people say that my iPhone was more secure, no. Who had the everybody asked them to the which phone had the best security, hands down, of all time? BlackBerry. What did BlackBerry do when before it went belly over? It gave it
Actually, they never went belly over. They're still in business.
they turned a bit to what degree? They
They're not
the
doing.
last
They're not just doing. They're not doing cell
I
phones. That's
know
what
the last phone they made was an Android phone. Before that happened, they submitted their encryption software information to Samsung to incorporate into Samsung Knox, which is why the idiot in chief was supposed to have a Samsung phone, not a BlackBerry, to prevent his phone from being hacked or getting tampered with. So it's easy to encrypt the phone, it's easy to protect the data on the phone. No if, no but about it. And that was a tip. And other Android phone can also download the same security that Samsung have onto the phone with it was the Samsung Knox. Google want to incorporate it as a standard protocol for all Android phones. It's hard to say. I don't know what it put out to be. It was a waste of time. Overpriced for a phone that's not even high end was actually a mid range phone.
honestly, I think all phones are overpriced, even Apple's. I mean, Google and Samsung.
No,
Yes,
Samsung
they
is
are.
not. No, Samsung wasn't overpriced.
I
What
think
it is,
over every single phone in the market was overpriced. I remember paying for phones that were high end. I mean, really high end, beyond anything. You paid 400 or 500. Now, Apple was pushing the market higher and higher, and everybody followed them.
they
I
put
really think the market right now is
I know.
overpriced.
Reason why that happened is due to the models, which was one. They had high end, they got mid range and low end. Samsung always had that. But the specs and the technology put into the phone were required for that. Apple had to bust their price because one, they were the only phone in the United States that could people to all the other brand. They want to make sure they retain their value. Even though behind closed door, they know they were a mid-range phone. For people who dissect phone and pour the color out for what it is, iPhone was been overpriced for the longest. You talk about manufacturer cost. The cheapest phone to manufacture was the iPhone.
Well, the new iPhones are actually keeping up pretty well with the Androids. I'll give you them that, but not to the extreme. If you think, yeah, I have an iPhone, I have an Android before, so I'm gonna push back completely on that. I use both, and I know they can keep up with each other pretty well. Right now, it doesn't matter which one you have anymore. It's which brand do you prefer? They're all the same shit now these days. So let's get in your final thought. Let's read the last comment. Yeah, but BlackBerry was slowing down. He was right about that. Was convinced over the touch screen like others. Okay, really fast. I had the Storm 2. I actually loved the Storm 2 when it came out. It was to me it was a good phone. I'm not gonna deny it, but I wasn't into the tech like I am now. So back if I had to let's say that came out today, I may feel a little different. So, David, you want to get your final thoughts and we close out?
My final thought was this commentary about Nintendo. Nintendo is what you would call the true OG of all gaming system whatsoever. They, yes, Mr. Bennett will correct, they're the only gaming system that saved the gaming industry because although the game back then, back in 1983, was failing, they were not doing too well. Atari was nowhere to be found during that time. Nintendo held on and keep the market going. They keep on improving. Other people came in afraid to compete with them. Sega did. Then you have Panasonic. Then you have Sony. And now who came in last but the best was Microsoft. But yet Nintendo have been here from the very start. And they ain't going nowhere no time soon. Which is why they consider to be the true OG in the gaming industry. And that is my final thought.
All right, before going to schedule, I wanted to answer this question. Don't like don't someone own the rights for the phone cameras? Yeah.
That'll be
Listen,
Sony.
yeah, I'm not sure who owns them. I don't know. But what I will say is I took a picture with a Samsung and an Apple, and when I have both of them, when I did my review years ago, and I really was disappointed at the time on the Ultra 23 was a let down. Personally, I thought the camera was 9 day. You can see the difference. 9 day, absolutely, because it's a different processor. But what I'm pushing back with David a little bit is I feel Apple has a better security system. Personal opinion, David. Don't we will have
I
that
know.
discussion.
I know.
Hang on,
You,
hang on.
okay.
Let me finish. You can have the line when we actually do a breakdown, Apple versus Android. Literally, we're going to have a breakdown, and I'm not going to be a referee. I am actually going to go on the Apple side. You know what I'm saying? Because it's kind of hard for me to pick right now. I say go Samsung because I've been having an Apple for the last 5 years, so I'm going to be Team Apple right now.
And I
So,
get it.
and it's fair right now because I'm going to go with what I own right now, and
And I
you're going to go
understand
with
that.
what you own. Yeah.
And
So go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
what I'm saying is not based on opinion. It has always been objective. The most secure phone hand down has ever been Samsung. Either you want to put opinion because fact will be fact. You can't change the fact. You can't change the truth. That is what the issue is. Samsung was the official federal government phone. It was never the iPhone. All the tech news, all the tech magazine knew about BlackBerry giving their encryption software to Samsung to have it incorporated into the Samsung Knox.
Mhm.
iPhone was always considered to be the headache on multiple companies, whereby for some apparent reason they have connectivity issues to their servers for their emails. It's
The
always been
biggest
the issue.
issue I feel Apple has right now, I don't know how Samsung does that anymore, but when I had my Samsung, I never had to. I have to restart my phone a lot more than I ever had with my Samsungs. You know, it's been a couple years since I had a Samsung.
And I've configured thousands of phones, and I'm telling you this. It's never been a day when I configure a end user phone who had a Samsung phone to have their email and account and match onto their phone.
But
Never come
also,
back
Dave,
to complaining.
all right, I'm gonna make the last statement. I'm going over the schedule because I have to work tomorrow. So the only thing I was gonna say, Apple does own the market for business. They give them for free pretty much. Every company I work for always has an Apple phone. Every company always gives iPhones out. The older models, but I've never walked into a company that said, here's a Samsung or here's never, ever, ever. Like all major companies, like you might disagree, David. I see your face. You want to kick my ass right now, but from my
I,
experience, every company has always an iPhone.
and you're talking to a tech.
I understand that. I am talking to a tech person, and I'm telling you, as a person that worked for multiple companies, every company I work for, Compass Group, Airmark, Sodexo, Livewell, and go on and on, has always been an iPhone. You know, St. Luke's, Lehigh Valley, iPhones after iPhones. All right, so let's go over the schedule and let's get out of here. So tomorrow we are speaking on the gray area. Me and Paul, she checks all the boxes, but you're not in love with her. That is going to be a very interesting conversation. And on Tuesday, I am back with the Sparta Arena. 5 things you should keep quiet about. Find out what I was going to be talking about. David, you want to go over your show?
Let me see. Let me check my schedule. I forgot about that part.
Brink. Brink. BAKI. Am I saying that right?
BA what?
KI. That's why you sent me the list. That's why I put it in. The most brutals martial artists
Oh,
anime ever made.
Baki. Oh, Baki.
I don't speak Japanese. I speak a little
That's
Japanese.
Baki. That was one of the biggest mangas straight into anime. It's one of the big deal. And the most recent adaptation is so gruesome. They got one of the highest rating of the best
Nice.
fighting anime out there. So we will have a good conversation. We'll talk heavy about it on Wednesday. And if you are a Baki fan, if you have information when the adult, please come join the conversation. And once again, I apologize for what happened on Wednesday. It's my fault. I would overstressed myself doing too much. And I need to take it easy on myself.
All right. So and Thursday, excuse me, Paul and David, Paul and Coach are going to be talking about workplace, and on Saturday we'll be back here talking about. Oh Christ, I didn't realize I did this. Armor up. Who has the most powerful armor? Yeah, we're going to be arguing next week. All right. Except that, David. Anything else?
Samsung is the best.
Oh, Jesus Christ, try that. All right, guys. As always, I am Ghost Aspire. He is Baby Groot Sperm Group right now because he's being a little
AKA Bear Paw or Congo the Mist, because we
You should really
African
swallow.
No, there's no Groot in Africa. That's the problem. We are
The
warrior
sperm party.
class.
You didn't get much. Oh, you went over your fucking
I
head.
know. We are warrior class. I want to say it's either bear or gorilla.
Anyway. All right. As always, this was the Spartan HQ Network. Stay fresh, stay safe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.